Brahma, Vishnu, Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Vedya Dravinam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Jai Guru. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we are in the second chapter.
Third chapter.
Anyway, the one on the 5 koshas, that chapter. And we're getting close to the end of it. So what verse are we on?
We're on verse 23.
Verse 23. Will you help us out, please, Puneet?
Yeah. Asti tavat swayam nama vivada vishayantavatah swasminappi vidascheta pratibadhyatra ko bhavet. One's identity is surely existing. There cannot be any opposition to that. Were it not so, who could be the opponent?
Yes. So again, in this chapter, he is arguing largely with the Shunyavadins, the scholiasts of the voids, the Buddhists who posit that ultimate reality, our essential nature, is nothing. And here he says, our essential nature is itself self-evident, self-revealing. How do you know you are you? Again, you do not see, hear, taste, touch, smell, emote, or think yourself, yet you are not unknown. You do not know yourself as an object, yet I'm me. And the Shunyavadins say, yeah, but that's temporary, it goes away. And here he says, if that be so, who knows it? So if consciousness itself were transient, by virtue of what would its transience be known? So one can never deny the eternal fact of the ground of being. Doesn't matter what you call it. Now, my personal opinion, the Buddha taught the same as the Vedanta. But when he talked about the doctrine of no self, anatman, he was talking about what we would call jiva bhavana, the feeling that I'm a person, this sense of individuality. That for sure is impermanent and can go away. But what sees its disappearance and reappearance? That's my essential nature. Any thoughts on this? Now, I am not a Buddhist, so do not take what I say as the gospel truth of Buddhism. Although I have talked with Buddhists who have studied in authentic Southeast Asian traditions, and they say it's the same. All right, next verse.
Swa sattva tunakasmaichit uchyate vibramam vina ata eva shrutir bhada bhrute cha sattva vadinah. Nobody except through delusion can entertain the idea that they do not exist. So the Shruti thus exposes the falsity of the position of one who denies the existence of the self.
So I can remember very vividly, I was up at Krishnalaya. This was after Swamiji passed away. No, just before Swamiji passed away. I was up there, I was staying up there. It's when he had asked me to come to India to take sannyas. And I went and did a workshop at some other place. I can't remember the name of it now. And I asked the question, who here doesn't exist? Up goes a hand. I said, oh, so you don't exist? No, I don't exist. And I said, have you experienced that? Yes, I've experienced it. And then, of course, the Vedantin says, and to whom did that experience occur? It's an unanswerable question. It's an unanswerable question. No one can deny the eternal fact of aham, of I-ing, of aware-ing. Language falls short. But we do make the clear distinction between that ground of being, that Satchidananda, and ahankara, the ego sense, which is impermanent, which does disappear, which ends. Any thoughts on this? Going on.
Asad brahmeti ched veda swayameva bhaveda sat atosya ma bhudavedhatvam swasatvam tvabhayupeyatam. He who believes Brahman to be non-existent becomes non-existent himself. End quote. It is true, the self can never be an object of knowledge, but you must accept the existence of the self, identified with its own existence, as a fact.
So what trips us up is when I think I now don't have an experience of the self, and then in some samadhi or some state, I'm going to have an experience of the self. It will come. I don't have it now, but it will come. We can't help it. because subject object knowledge is the only knowledge we're aware of, that we're familiar with. And what Vidyaranya is saying is no. Actually, you already have the experience of the self, not as an object, but as pure subjectivity. It is not knowable as an object. Speech does not go there, intellect does not go there, the senses don't go there. Yet it is not unknown. I mean, so what is it that happens? What is realization? I remove from my attention all that is removable. Anything that has a beginning and an end, anything that is subject to change, anything that is limited to the waking, dream, or deep sleep state, and most importantly, anything that is an object of cognition. Withdraw my attention from it and see what's the residual, see what's left over, see what remains. It's always there. It's always there. But because of the mind's extroversion, because of its fascination with external phenomena, I miss it. You don't become Brahman. You don't merge into Brahman. We get nothing new. We just get rid of my false identification with the non-self. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
कीदृक्तर्हीर्ति चेदृच्छेद दृक्ता नास्ति तत्र हि यदनीदृगतादृक्श्च तत्स्वरूपं तत्स्वरूपं विनिश्चिनु. If you ask what sort of thing the self is, then we reply that the self cannot be described as being this or that. It cannot be conceived as being like this or like that. So take it as your own real nature.
So one of the problems we have, especially those of us who may have been trained in some form of what we call cataphatic mysticism, cataphatic theology. We think of God, we think of truth in terms of allegories, images. Well, is it like this? Is it like that? So you cannot find any words that define it. We cannot say, aha, that's it. I see the self. Will never be an experience like that. And we have to be careful. Oh, is it like outer space? No, I guess it's more like an ocean. See, we keep wanting to find an allegory, a metaphor. And that gets in the way. Krishna says it so clearly in Gita, the second chapter. He who knows, knows it not. The self is like this, the self is like that. He who knows it not knows, implying unknown. Stop. Now, why does this work? In Mandukya Upanishad, which we study with the Gaudapada, in the 4th chapter, which is titled Alata Shanti, the quenching of the firebrand. And I updated the quenching of the sparkler. So on Diwali or the 4th of July, it's nighttime and you have the sparkler and you can make a circle. Now, does the circle exist? No, but it's seen. Now, the movement of the tip of the sparkler is analogous to the movement of thought, of vrittis. Once the thoughting happens, the perception of the world, the experience of the ego, feelings, thoughts, memories, likes, dislikes show up. That circle in the firebrand is incredibly powerful to manifest stuff. But if we take the sparkler and we cease its movement, where does the circle in the firebrand go? Gone. See what's really there. Oh, the glowing tip of the sparkler. So even if just once for a moment we still the thoughting, the movement of the various vrittis, and the individual knower of the world itself, and the reactions to the world. What's left? Just the round of being, the field of awareness itself. And when the mind returns, I'm no longer fooled by it. Actually, this manifestation of phenomena, God doing it or am I doing it, is going to be the subject of the next chapter. It's very, very interesting material. Very interesting. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Akshanam Vishayasatvid Paroksha Stadruguchyate Vishayi Naksha Vishaya Svatvat Nasya Parokshata. An object which the senses can perceive can be said to be like this. An object which is beyond the range of sense perception is said to be like that. That which is the subject cannot be an object of the senses. But as it is the very self of everyone, it cannot be said to be beyond the ken of perception.
Yes. So I can say that the table here in my living room is a hard surface. It is like that, as opposed to the couch, which is a soft and mushy surface. Antithetically, I can say love as a feeling is not like that. It is different. It makes my heart warm. I have nice images. It's like this or like that. So we can have descriptors for anything in the world that is gross or subtle. But when it comes to the self, whatever words we traditionally use, at best, only point. They do not define. Yet, myself is not unknown. In fact, it is always known. Will I ever not be? My doubt is the nature of myself. My doubt is adhyasa, superimposition. Snake in the rope, person in the post, mirage waters in the desert. There's a substratum, and I imagine something else on it. Substratum is me. Chidananda Rupa. My form is bliss consciousness. But in my delusion, I superimpose on that the qualities of the body, mind, and intellect. That's the problem. Any thoughts? Next verse.
Avedhyo vyapparokshyo taha swaprakasho bhavatyayam satyam jnanam anantam chet yastiha brahma lakshanam. Though it cannot be made an object of knowledge, the self is still felt very directly. So it must be self-revealing. Existence, consciousness, and infinity, the indications used for Brahman, are all present here also in the self.
Yes. So even though it cannot be known as an object, even the word felt falls short. It is self-evident, self-shining, self-luminous. And here he uses the words existence, consciousness, and infinity. Words we use to describe
The reason you said felt is inadequate is because it has a connotation of time associated.
well, felt like with the mind, like I feel things, but words fall short. I don't feel the self like I feel sorrow or I feel anger. Those feelings are objects of perception. Does that make sense?
Right.
But eyeing is not that. So, Sat, when are you ever not you? When do you ever cease to exist? That never happened yet. Well, I think I didn't exist before I was born. I have no memory before I was born. Dude, you don't have memory of 10 years ago. But you didn't cease to exist. Continuity of memory is no test of existence. Chit, conscious, aware. I am always aware, even in deep sleep. I may not know it because I have a misunderstanding. I think awareness goes away when the mind is folded up in deep sleep. We've talked about this. Sleep is not like being blind. Sleep is like closing your eyes, where you see the back of your eyelids, which obscure all objective seen objects. Likewise, the mind is folded up in pure ignorance. Otherwise, in the morning when I wake up, I could not say, oh, I slept so well. I didn't wake up once during the night. And infinity, what's the word he uses for infinity? Nityam?
Anantam.
Anantam. Oh, which means like through time. Through time. There is never a time when I am not. And here, back to his argument with the Shunyavadins, even in the deepest samadhi, everything else goes away, but awareness. Next verse.
Satyatvam Badharahityam Jagat Badhaika Badha Kinsakshiko Bruhi Natvasashik Natvasashika Ishyate. Existence is what cannot be negated. If the self, which is the witness of the perishable, if the self, which is the witness of the perishable world, becomes perishable, then who will be the witness to the fact of its perishability? For destruction without a witness of it cannot be postulated.
And I was watching this video on physics, and the question, the name of the video was, is the world real? Does the world really exist? It's a little bit beyond my understanding, but they're going down to the quantum level. When basically what they're saying is, it's all just probability until it is observed. It is the very act of observation that concretizes matter. That is mind-blowing. It is knowing that makes things be. And the idea is light, when you don't observe it, behaves like a wave. Light, when you observe it, behaves like a photon, like a particle of matter. It knows when you're looking at it. And Vedanta says, Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma, all this is verily consciousness. And it is the, how can we put this? Well, will you say what the Upanishad does? Purnat Purnamudachyate, from the fullness of that, the fullness of this issues or proceeds for. That's the great Maya Shakti of the infinite. But it's not different in substance. Oh, next verse.
Apaniteshu smurteshu yamurtam shishyate viyat shakyeshu badhiteshvante shishyate yatya devatat. When all forms are destroyed, the formless space still remains. So when all the perishable things are destroyed, what remains is that is the imperishable Brahman or Self.
And again, exactly what we were talking about. Purnasya Purnamadaya. When from the fullness of that, the fullness of this is taken away, Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Fullness alone. Just as in, let's say you're going to move. When you left your loft and moved into your house, I'm talking to Puneet here, and you took all the furniture out of your loft, the space in the loft remained, did it not?
Mm-hmm.
It was just empty. Likewise, when all name and form is negated, macrocosmically, this would be at the end of time. For you and me, it means samadhi. When from the fullness of that, the fullness of this is taken away, fullness still remains. Stop the mind and see if you disappear. And the opposite is true. If there's some issue or some trigger and your mind starts to spin, that's why I love the word vritti. Vritti normally is translated as a thought, but it comes from the root vert, which means to turn. It's where we get the English word vortex. I guess that's actually a Latin word. To spin. So if you go into the ocean and there's a vortex, great big huge ships can be sucked down into the ocean by that vortex.
Wonder if vertigo is also from the same.
Very likely, because you feel like you're spinning. Yeah. But the point here is with a vritti, it's the thoughts are just flowing by, no problem. But when I spin on something, how could she have said that to me? Oh, that hurt my feelings so badly. Oh, I'm so angry and so and so. Oh, I'm so fearful about this thing at work. then I start to concretize it by my attention, my thinking about it, and then add emotion to it, my feeling about what I'm thinking about. Reminds me of the story. So this woman, she's on one of the apps. She sees a good-looking fellow. They communicate on the app. They decide to have a date. Friday. He's going to come over and take her out to dinner. This is only Tuesday. So she starts thinking, oh, he's probably going to be another jerk like all the other guys I've been with. And oh, like my last husband. Oh, that was so terrible. He's going to be just like that. So I'll meet him and I'll think he's hot, and then we'll get together. And then, like a fool, I'm going to fall for him, and then we'll get married, and he's just going to be terrible to me, and he's going to cheat on me. How could he do that? Oh, he's just a pig. So the fellow shows up on Friday with a bouquet of flowers in his hand. She opens the door and says, how could you do this to me? Slam. Where did it all take place? Everything. But these things become so real. And we feed them with our thought. Of course, the opposite is true too. How do you stop the vritti? Turn the mind away from it. Usually, if you're emotionally entangled, it's not the time you're going to be able to dwell in silence. Give the mind that's non-karma producing thoughts. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Shivaya. Oh, turn the mind away from it. And the issue will wither. Then it'll be like a little dust devil. It starts as a vritti and then it's gone. Any thoughts on this? Incredibly important lesson in yoga. The mind is the world is the mind. Next verse.
सर्वबाधेन किञ्चित् किञ्चित् चेध्यन्य किञ्चिदेव तत् भाषा एवात्र भिद्यन्ते निर्बाधं तावदस्ति हि. If the opponent objects, quote, nothing remains, end quote, after everything, name and form, has been destroyed, then we reply that what you describe as nothing is the self. Here the language alone differs, but there surely remains something that is the witness after the destruction of all.
So Vidyaranya here is saying just what I did. Okay, granted, You are in a Buddhist tradition. You have Kinsho, little glimpses, and you have a deep Satori, or what the Vipassana would say, Samadhi, and something absolutely disappears, and no thing remains. And here the Nirani says, it's just a matter of language. What you're saying is no thing. We call the self. Who cares what you call it? Point is, you are not nothing. That's only an intellectual exercise. It's not an experience. Listen carefully. This does not mean that the ego sense is a permanent individual entity. That's Sankhya philosophy. It's not the Vedanta. The individuality is impermanent. Does end. Any thoughts, questions? Next verse. Are you guys still there in Zoom land? You're so quiet tonight.
Yeah, we're here.
Right here.
अत एव श्रुतिर्बाध्यं बाधित्वा यदः स एष नेति नेत्यात्मे यत्तव्या वृत्तिरूपतः. It is for this that the Shruti in the passage, quote, that Atman is not this, end quote, negates all objects having names and forms, but keeps the that is Atman intact.
Yes. So neti, not iti, not this, is always done in twos. We never just say neti, and we never say neti. It's always neti. What does it mean? Not this, meaning I negate all forms at the microcosmic level. I am not the body, I am not the prana, I am not the feelings, I am not the thoughts, I'm not even the vasanas. And I negate all the forms at the macrocosmic level. Brahman is not all the phenomenal names and forms, the stars, the galaxies, the planets. It is not the total mind. It is not the total vasana. It is consciousness, which is the substratum of the whole creation. And that Brahman, which is the substratum of the whole creation, and that Atman, consciousness, which is the self, they are the same thing. I am Atma. Next verse.
Idam rupam tu yadhyatvat tatya shakya tekhilam ashakyo hyanidan rupaha sa atma bada varjitaha. The entire world, severally and collectively, that can be referred to as this, can be negated. but the thing which is not this can never be negated, and this indestructible witness is the self.
Yes. So, where the rubber meets the road, to my direct experience, if I negate anything that has a beginning and an end, anything that has form, anything that has qualities, anything that is confined to the waking state or the dream state or the deep sleep state or any other altered state. Most importantly, anything that can be known objectively. What's the residual? What's left over? What is the knower of the field in all fields, as Krishna says in Gita? That's me, myself. Vidyaranya said, yup. And that is the eternal factor. Chidananda Rupam. I'm a form of bliss consciousness. Shivoham, Shivoham, Ch.3. Next verse.
Siddha Brahmani Satyatvam Jnanatvam tu Pareritam Swayam Evanubhutitvat Atyadi Vachanait Sputam. Thus has been established here the eternal existence of the self, which according to the Shruti is Brahman, and its nature of pure consciousness has already been proved in verses 11 to 22 by statements like, quote, it is awareness itself, end quote.
So he's now summing up the point in the discussion of the Panchakosha, the five sheaths. He introduces to us the principal meditation technique. It is known as Ch.3 Viveka, discrimination between the seer and the seen. It is known as Atma Vichara, investigation into the nature of the self. It is Viveka, that firm conviction in the intellect that Brahman alone is real and the phenomenal world is unreal. And then my constant endeavor to let go of my identification with, my attachment to all forms, all ideas of self, without exception. What remains? Go there and directly realize. See whether or not it corresponds to what Vidyaranya is saying, the Upanishads are saying. Are true for me. In the end, it's so incredibly simple. It's so simple, everybody misses it. I like to say the self is difficult to realize not because it's far away or demands some heroic action, but because of its profound ordinariness. It is so ordinary, I miss it. Doesn't mean it's not valuable. Is that the last one in this chapter?
No, there are a few more.
Okay.
No vyapitva deshatonto nityatvánapi kalatah na vastutopi sarvatmayat anantyam brahmani tridha. Being all pervasive, Brahman is not limited by space. Being eternal, it is not limited by time. And being of the nature of everything, it is not limited by any object. Thus, Brahman is infinite in all three respects.
Yes. It's not limited by space or time, or anything. So the word nityam, eternal, is outside of time and space. So, if you watch a YouTube video on what the scientists call inflation. So, at the Big Bang, in just a nanosecond, the universe expanded to 3/4 of the size it is now. Inflation. That happened faster than the speed of light. And in that, time and space and multiplicity came into being. Before that, in the singularity, there was no time. There was no space. My mind can't conceive of that. But what I can conceive of is the dream state. Remember, I always say you are the God of your dream. In the dream, I create space in which the dream story takes place. I create the time in which the dream activity moves. And I create all the people, places, things, and conditions in the dream. When I awaken, the space is gone, the time is gone, and the multiplicity is gone. So does the infinite spin all of this. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Deshakalanya vastunam kalpitatvacha mayaya na deshadikrito nosti brahmanantyam sputam tatah. Space, time, and the objects in them being illusions caused by Maya, there is no limitation of Brahman by them. Infinity of Brahman is therefore clear.
So he's just riffing on the same point. Space, time, and multiplicity do not touch, alter, or change. Just like whether it's a pleasant dream or a nightmare, the time and space and multiplicity of the dream never touch me, the waker. I'm still safe in my bed. I may be upset, but that's like memory. It still doesn't touch me. And practically speaking, as we move through the day, stop for a moment. Introvert the attentive faculty. Check out yourself. Yeah, I'm still the vast space of your awareness. I didn't turn into a little gray ball with wings. Nothing in this world has touched me ever. And if it doesn't touch me, then the vicissitudes of this world don't touch anyone else. They may, in their ignorance, think it does, but it doesn't. I've been watching too much YouTube. There was this 5-year-old, and he was going to school, to kindergarten for the first time. And his older brother was in first grade. And he was really scared. He didn't want to leave his older brother. Finally, his older brother was just in the classroom right next door. But there he was in kindergarten, and the teacher brought crayons and things, and he was just too upset. And finally, he burst into tears and put his head down. Now, you and I know this child is fine. It's just something new. But the child still burst into tears and cried. But the fear was based on his imagination. No one was punishing him. He wasn't going to be left alone. It wasn't anything. So if nothing ever touches the self in me, that means really nothing ever touches the self in anyone else. Now, that doesn't mean, as we move through the world, that we should behave in a cavalier way. Krishna is very clear about this in Gita. We do not unsettle the minds of the ignorant with the truth. We meet people where they are. But inside, it's all going to be okay for this person. Even dying is completely safe. Next verse.
Satyam Jnanam Anantam Yat Brahma Tadvastu Tasya Yat Ishwaratvam च देवत्वम् उपाधिद्वयकल्पितम्. Brahman, who is existence, consciousness, and infinity, is the reality. Its being Ishvara, the omniscient Lord of the world, and Jiva, the individual soul, are mere superimpositions by the two illusory adjuncts, Maya and Avidya, respectively.
So these are technical discernments. In the very earliest scriptures, Maya and Avidya aren't as clear and precise. By the time we get to Shankara, let alone another 500-600 years to Vidyaranya. Anyway, universal ignorance we call Maya, individual ignorance we call avidya, macrocosm, microcosm. So, Maya is the inherent property of consciousness. Locus of Maya is Brahman itself. So, the world is here, we see it, and to us it appears concrete and real. Walk down the street and you feel the warmth of the sun. It's 93 million miles away. It's still so much intense energy. Is that real or not? Well, there's a relative reality to it. It's really just a superimposition of Brahman. And in this world, I feel like I'm a person. That too is just a superimposition. It's nothing permanent, nothing real. Next verse.
Shaktir Satyaishwari Kachit Sarvavastu Niyamika Anandam Ayamarambhaya Gudha Sarveshu Vastushu. There is a power called Maya of this Ishvara which controls everything. It informs all objects from the bliss sheath to the physical body and the external world.
So, this inherent power of consciousness, this Maya Shakti, is co-eternal with the self. It's just what consciousness does. And it's by means of this Maya Shakti that the five koshas appear. And not just for human beings, it's for the tortoises and the dolphins. And it was true for the dinosaurs. It's true for alien space people if they're out there. And it's true for the stars, the galaxies, and electrons. All of it comes into being. And Swamiji always used to say, it's not a chaos, it's a cosmos. The more we observe the phenomenal universe, we begin to see its organization, its inherent intelligence, its beauty. God's in charge. Next verse.
Vastur dharma niyam rena shaktya naiva yada tada anyonya dharma sankaryat vipalveta jagat khalu. If the particular attributes of all objects are not determined by this power, there would be chaos in the world, for there would be nothing to distinguish the properties of one object from those of another.
Yes, so it is intelligent. It's why when I woke up this morning, light traveled at 186,000 miles per second. And tomorrow it will be the same speed. Light doesn't travel at a different speed for Puneet than it does for me. The laws of gravity, strong and weak force, electromagnetism, all various physical and metaphysical laws. It's incredibly organized, it's incredibly beautiful. I think they're called fractals. You know, you look at a tree and you see the basic shape of the limbs coming out of the trunk. Then you take any one branch, you see the other branches coming out of it, and it echoes the same shape. And then you go down to a leaf and you look at a leaf and you see the same patterns. They're being repeated over and over and over again. Or you look at something like a chambered nautilus and the mathematics that are inherent in a chambered nautilus. Just amazing thing. It's everywhere. Find order, beauty, and mystery. Because Ishvara is in truth. And this is what Carl Jung implied when he came up with his notion of synchronicity. We begin to intuitively perceive the fundamental connectedness of everything. What's a coincidence? Oh, it's just God wanting to be anonymous. How many more verses?
4 more.
Okay, we don't have time. All right, we'll end here and we'll wrap up the last 4 in this chapter and then start on the next chapter next week. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.